Hi guys, welcome back to the Butterfly Effect podcast. Today we are doing the second episode of Season 2 Telltale's The Walking Dead, titled A House Divided. And as always, we're going to kick off straight with the choices. So the first choice is, did you take blame for the photo or not? So obviously Sarah will take the photo. When Carver introduces himself, he'll find it. And then Carlos later on will have a go at Sarah and you can defend her. What did you do in that situation, mate?
I absolutely did not take the blame for the photo, and this is something I feel like I'm going to be saying quite a lot with this episode. I mean, it's my favourite episode anyway, with what happens in it. But I'm going through my notes here. I was absolutely savage in the stream, especially with the dialogue and some of the little one-liners that Clem would drop. I absolutely loved it. So yeah, when the opportunity passed, I just immediately tapped that it was all Sarah's fault. And you could then just see the look of horror on her face. So yeah, I absolutely love that.
No, it's pretty fun. I did see your stream. It did make me chuckle. I can't remember what I did on my blind playthrough because I think it is a bit of a nothing choice. I think it says Sarah will remember this, but I generally don't think it has that much of an effect. I think sometimes those things are given there, so when you're playing, you don't know who you need to form relationships with, kind of thing. So I do think it's a bit of a nothing choice, but I feel like young me probably would have backed her up just to kind of keep the bridges unburnt, if it were. The second choice, lad, is who did you sit with for dinner, Kenny or Luke? What did you pick?
So in the stream, actually everyone voted to go and sit with Luke, which I'm glad they did that, because in my blind playthrough I just went with Kenny. I was wrapped up in the nostalgia. You didn't expect to get a reunion with Kenny because back in the day I wasn't one of those people that just sat on the internet looking for rumours and dissecting trailers and things, so it was a surprise to me. And then but so obviously sitting there this time, I think it's quite good as well, because I swear that later on in the series that if you go and sit with Luke, when you're talking to Kenny, he actually says to you that it hurt his feelings a little bit, but at the same time that he was super proud of you, almost like that father figure, where Lee's gone now and he's saying, oh, this girl's really growing up and stuff. So I feel like it's a good either way, mate. I mean, it's always going to go to shit regardless, but you know what I mean? I like both outcomes.
Yeah, I remember in my blind playthrough I picked Luke, but it's one of those ones where it's just I was angry at both of them, because it's the whole thing where, in school, you're in the cafeteria and you might have two people nah, sit with me, join our team or whatever. I'm just these are two adults and they're fighting over a kid to come and sit with them. And then it creates this awkward atmosphere. It's why are you on separate tables anyway? You should be getting to know each other. You should be mixed up anyway. So I just was oh, fuck you both for putting me in this situation. But I know I picked Luke. I can't remember why. I think it's maybe I don't want to appear I've just ditched the group that, I've helped. When I say I've helped, it's more we've helped them in a lot of shit, but still. Maybe a bit of a nothing choice. Like you said, it's just a bit of dialogue later on, isn't it? The third choice, lad, is obviously we get the whole bridge scene with Matthew, and then Walter confronts you about it. As always, guys, we will do more of a deep dive on it now. We are literally just going through the choices. But you can have the option to kind of lie to Matthew about what happened. Lie to Walter about what happened to Matthew. Did you tell him the truth and say it was Nick, or did you try and lie to him?
I had to tell him the truth. There are a couple of characters where I feel like I can't be savage to, and Walt is one of them. I don't know why. He just comes across as such a nice guy. When you have that conversation with him before, he's ever the optimist. And you know what? Just as a quick, side tangent, because we've talked about Sarah as well. As much as I criticize is a strong word, but he's talking about Sarah, and obviously you can include Walt in this, how they can almost be a little bit naive about people's behaviour and the way they conduct themselves in an apocalypse. At the same time, I also appreciate that they're trying to almost channel a positive energy, and they're trying to ignorance is bliss sort of thing, because you can also imagine being in a group in an apocalypse. Everyone's cynical, everyone's a bit on edge, but sometimes you need that levity, you need that person there. And I found that was what Walt was in this instance, so it was a bit of a bummer when he died, actually. And genuinely, I felt sorry for the guy because, you know, and I've said this earlier on, I've got it down in my notes here. Why on earth is Nick trusted with the gun? I don't know. I'm pretty sure I said it in the last analysis as well. And the fact that he says, oh, he raised the gun to me first. And I'm like, no, he didn't. Like, you raised the gun to him. So, yeah, I'm very sympathetic to Walt and the situation with Matthew as well. So, yeah, very easy choice to tell him, mate. And it was the same with the stream as well.
Yeah, I told him the truth as well, and I think the reason I told him the truth is because, like, he found the guy's knife in my bag. I feel like the cat was literally at the bag at this point, and I was like, I feel like if I was to lie, I think he's going to see right through it. So I think I just was really transparent with him. I was like, look, like, yeah, it was us. But, I mean, this leads straight into choice 4, mate, which comes, like, bang on afterwards. Walter kind of says, did he mean to do it? Is he a good person? And you can either say, no, Nick is a good person, or no, he's just like everyone else. So Jack, why don't you tell us what you went and did in your stream?
Yeah, so basically you've got this scene with Clem, you've got to shoot some zombies, you've got to dodge a couple of zombies, and then you're running back to the lodge, and Walt's just like stepped out the door, and then Nick gets attacked by a zombie, and it starts like eating at his neck. And Walt stands there, and Clem stands there, and it is a bit that makes me laugh. Because they sort of stand there doing absolutely nothing for like a solid like 5 to 10 seconds, and then as soon as like Nick's, you know, basically dead at this point, they're like, no, or at least Clem is. Like, Walt just sort of looks the other way, you know, he's like, oh, I didn't see that, and heads off. But what I found really interesting, I found this out during the stream, I think it was Anthony, that told me, that Nick can actually get past this episode. So I was like, what? I sort of wish the opposite happened now, because I haven't seen Nick beyond this point. So yeah, he died for me.
Yeah, so like he lived for me in my blind playthrough, and the key is you have to say, yeah, no, Nick's a good person. He didn't mean to do it or whatever. It was an accident or whatever. And then, you know, Walter will actually save Nick at that scene. So yeah, like Nick can get through not only just, you know, episode 3, but all the way through to episode 4 as well, which, you know, we'll look into it, like the variations there. But yeah, so obviously, yeah, in your stream, that means you were a character down. Another character could actually die later on in this episode as well, which can be avoidable, which shows you just how cool this episode actually is. And maybe amid other reasons, such as Kenny coming back, that is the reason it is your favorite episode, because there are 2 characters that can die in this episode, which is nuts, right? And it actually comes in the form of Alvin. So when, you know, your group is under hostage, you know, when Carver's group come back and find you at the ski lodge, you can, the choice is, do you leave to find Kenny, yes or no? I mean, in your stream and in my playthrough, I said yeah, like it makes sense to go out, see if there's another way around. But weirdly, it's not displayed as the choice, because in my opinion, it is the bigger choice. But if you go and see Kenny, he's going to shoot Carver. You can either encourage him or you can stop him. So before I carry on with what I did, what happened in the stream with you, lad?
So if we're talking about like did I go and find Kenny? Yes, I did. Which I'm glad I did, because in my blind playthrough I did the opposite. I stayed there. My logic being was that, you know, they're outside, you know, if I go out there's a risk that I could end up getting, you know, helping them catch them and stuff like that. So I was like, no, I'll stay in the lodge. This time, yeah, went and got Kenny, and I encouraged him to shoot. I wanted chaos. It's one of the reasons I love this episode so much. Literally, one of my points I've got here, from the bridge scene onwards, it is literally the peak of season 2 for me, like hands down. So yeah, I wanted the chaos, I wanted there to be deaths and things, and yeah, ultimately Alvin hit the bucket, mate.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where it's like chess, it's like a pawn for a pawn. So like Kenny will shoot one of the guards, one of like the cronies, but as a result, Carver will kill Alvin. So in your stream, it's interesting, you would have lost Nick and Alvin here. For me, I told him not to shoot, because it's just that whole thing, when you're the hostages and you're on the back foot, I was like, yeah, I don't think there's much point us attacking here. I think we need to kind of play mercy here. So like Alvin lived for me. But yeah, like Alvin gets a really unfortunate story here on out, regardless of what you do, because obviously he wants to worm in, he wants to be the dad, so like he basically just tortures Alvin from here on out. So it might be a blessing in disguise, mate, that he left the game at this point for you, because he does not have a pretty episode 3. I'm telling you that much.
I think we'll go and see what that's like. So to this day, I've still not seen what it's like with Alvin in episode 3. So.
Yeah. There's quite a bit of variety in that one when we get to the House Hardware store. But those are the choices. So a lot of topics to talk about, because quite a bit happens in this episode. But I'm just kind of going to start generally, mate, with probably the biggest sort of highlight, which is the reunion, which I imagine you probably got goosebumps when you saw. Your favourite character came back in Bonnie. So I wonder how you felt about that, mate. Nah, okay, it is Kenny. It is Kenny, mate. We'll start with Kenny.
Of course, yeah. Honestly, it was great. I said this in the stream, was that I like the fact that there was another bit of season 1 continuity in there. I mean, obviously, talking about Bonnie, we know that that's obviously a carry on from 400 Days, which, I really like. But, for it just to be Clem, I mean, I know we had Omid and Krista, but they were like cast aside very quickly, and they was towards the back end of season 1 anyway. Kenny, you literally meet this guy in it's episode 1, isn't it, of season 1. So the fact that you can get to spend time with him again, you have the heart to heart, and also another thing is just to see how he's changed and where you're starting to see his decline. I think back to when they're at the dinner table and he has this Freudian slip where he mentions duck, and you're thinking, oh god, this guy, you can tell that he's got the weight of the world on his shoulders, that he's still mourning the loss of his son and his wife. Obviously he's in another relationship now, but that's going to weigh on you, and the fact they've had to move around a lot, different people. So to be reunited with that character and just see sort of the complexities in there, the greyness, it was a welcome return, mate.
Yeah, I've obviously seen it, a few times now, but I still get little goosebumps from it, and it's interesting because I don't hate Kenny, but I never really sided with him in season 1. I always sort of saw the bad points and thought he was too chaotic for the group. I sort of see him as a bit of a live wire danger figure. But still, though, I'm gonna go in for the hug with Kenny. It's such a warm welcome to see a familiar face, and I just really like the fact that your group is in a standoff with their group, and it's just that usually in video games, it's especially one where it doesn't really focus on the graphics too much, like Telltale do, because they really go for that comic art. It's hard to convey that emotion, but you still feel it when he's angry and he's holding the gun up to the group, and his eyes just dart down and see you. And I don't know, that bit just fucking gets me every time. And it's just the fact that Penny seeing Clementine just diffuses the situation, and suddenly everyone's buddy for a brief moment. And I just thought that was just such a powerful scene, maybe the best scene in season 2. So I agree.
I was just going to add on top of that, because it's something that I noted down, and it's something I've not noticed before, but obviously I was looking at this from a more analytical point of view now. But I think, what really helps that scene? I mean, I was always going to hug the guy, right? Savage Clem can be parked to one side when it comes to Kenny, he's going to get a hug from me. What I thought was a beautiful touch is how, when that moment happened, they brought on the season 1 music.
I noticed that as well. I only just noticed that when I was doing my notes for this, yeah.
Exactly, and I thought that was just such a beautiful, subtle touch at bringing back that sort of experience, that emotion from, seeing this character, but almost as harking back to, season 1 as well. So I thought it was a really good moment, a really significant moment for this series.
I think as well, if you're a diehard fan like us, and if you're such a Kenny head like you are, you'll probably kind of recognize his voice before you get down the ladder. And it's a case of just rushing down the ladder, let me get to Kenny, I know he's there. Especially as well, as I mentioned, I still think Nick serves as a bit of a ploy to kind of mess with diehard fans in the trailer, oh, we're getting Kenny, and then you play episode 1, it's okay, we're not getting Kenny, we're getting Nick, and then you get Kenny again, and it's they really fucked about your emotions, but they did it so well. I want to go back to like the dinner table scene which you mentioned, and yeah, like it's interesting because they start planting these seeds, don't they, of like a bit of friction between. I mean, it's Kenny and Nick, but also a bit of Luke in there as well, because that will be a recurring theme throughout the game, as well as like the choice we mentioned of who do you sit with at dinner, and you already get Kenny's early sort of ideologies and his plan going on. In season 1, he had the crazy idea that like, oh, we'll go to the coast, there will be a boat. And now he's like, we're going to go up north, there will be a civilization. So it's interesting. It's like Kenny's evolved in many ways. But what I like about Kenny's writing is that he's still fundamentally Kenny. Like, he's not wavered that much in his principles. And I thought that was pretty decent as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think that's the thing. Part of the reason why Kenny is so lovable is because I think we can see that his intentions, his motivations are sort of honest and pure. He's very much the family man. He's very group orientated. He does take a lot of the responsibility on himself to act as almost like a father figure to look after everyone. However, sometimes his methods and the way he puts things across, and especially like at that dinner table scene where he just randomly flips on Nick, doesn't he, because he mishears him. You can see the flaws there. You can see like how this is probably getting a bit too much for him, and he needs somebody else to shoulder the responsibility. But he's probably doing it for his own reasons. Like, he's probably doing it to try and forget the things that are really haunting him, like the death of his wife and his son. So yeah, such an amazing character. A lot to dive deep into.
Nah, big time. So yeah, like Kenny, just like what a guy, epic to have him back. We'll talk about the other comeback, Bonnie. My question, I have 2 questions for you. One, did you expect us to see 400 days in this game, like at least some characters from that? And question 2, or B, I can't remember what I said, if I went for numbers or letters. But the second question, if you could have picked any of the 400 Days characters to play the prominent role, because Bonnie will take the lead sort of one out of the 5 that we played as, who would you have chosen? Would it have been Bonnie?
Ooh. Was I surprised about seeing Bonnie first of all? I don't know. I don't think I've really had a feeling on it. I suppose you could say no, because in a way, like the way it ended, the fact that I forgot what the woman's name was that rounded them all up.
Tavia,
that's it, yeah. For some reason I was thinking Kate Gabrielle. I don't know where that came from. But yeah. So like Tavia, how she rounds them all up, you'd expect it to lead into season 2. What I thought was cleverly done though is because like maybe players' expectations were slightly altered because we've played as Bonnie, we therefore think that she's going to be a good person. So like when she comes to the house and she's asking for food, as the player probably thinking, oh Bonnie, she's not going to be bad, yeah, help her out. But then she's part of this other group and she's actually part of like, the dark side, Carver's side for a little while. I think that was probably not quite a nice play. But to answer your second question, I don't know. I think I'd base it on the story that I enjoyed the most, which was probably Wyatt's. When we covered 400 Days, I just loved that whole car chase thing, the fog, the situation, that how they're getting like chased. So yeah, I'd have probably picked Wyatt, and I'd say that I do think, we probably mention this next time anyway, but like I do wish the 400 Days characters got a little bit more airtime. I'm talking about the other ones other than Bonnie in this particular series, but yeah, I'd have probably picked Wyatt, mate.
Yeah, no, I get you. So like the comeback was really welcome, and I like exactly how you put it, because you played as Bonnie, you expect her to be good, so it is a really epic twist that she turns on you. Albeit like, that won't last, because she does become good and becomes the Bonnie as we know her. But yeah, like weirdly, my favourite was also Wyatt. However, I think for the role they made, I feel like it needed to be Bonnie. Like I feel like like Wyatt was like a fun sort of segment, but I feel like if you was to put him in that role where Bonnie is, I feel like maybe it wouldn't work unless they like altered the role somehow. So like weirdly, I'm kind of glad they went for Bonnie. Like I thought it worked quite well. So I mean, like I said, there's so much to talk about in this episode, but I'm gonna rewind right back to the start, mate. The last bit where we get to meet Pete, where you know, he's not doing so good. Because in our playthroughs, we would have had Pete. This also can be Nick if you sided with him. One thing I think you mentioned in the stream that you didn't know is that depending on who you with, you kind of end and start the next episode in different locations. So like Pete will be in the back of like the truck or the van. Nick will be in this little shed with like full of moonshine. So what was your take on that?
Again, I really, really liked it. And I feel like, you know, if there was a comparison between this season and season 1, you got to say that the branching, you know, it's working in season 2's favour at the minute. Yeah, I really like that. I think in both instances, I've been with Pete. So it was obviously it's a very simple scene. You're in the back of this like van, and you know, I gave him the saw, I gave him the cigarette. I thought, you know what, I like this guy. He's gonna have his time out. I did have a little bit of a laugh though. And I feel like, you know, there's quite a few lines throughout this episode. I'm sure I'll say them all at one point. But it's like this really sincere moment, and Pete's saying about how he's like really scared to die and everything. And you think, God, this could be quite heavy. And then there's just this dialogue option that comes up. It says, "You're going to be okay." So I was like, if the temptation was too much, I was like, I'm going to have to pick it. And then Clem goes, "You're going to be okay." And it's just like, it's the most... You know, harking back to like the Heavy Rain series with what like Scott can reply to Lauren with, it's like the most inappropriate thing you could say, that he's, you know, he's death's door and you're going to say, "Nah, you'll be all right."
Yeah.
So I had a bit of a chuckle with that. But no, I'll throw it back to you, mate. I mean, I can't properly remember. Maybe I've not even ever seen what happens if you're with Nick, what you talk about, where you are, etc. So I don't know if you want to enlighten me.
Yeah, I mean, both are sort of the same. Like, I think, like, Nick, like, stays where he is. I think for different reasons, because Pete's the bite. I think for Nick, I can't remember exactly why. I think he's just, like, down in the dumps or something. But he won't leave with you. But it's the scene where you come back that gets you, because obviously Nick, like, finds the moonshine and he starts drinking it. That, like, the way I played it was particularly funny, and I think this is the way I encourage everyone else to do it, is to start with Pete, because with Pete, obviously you get the sad scene where after the Carver deal happens, which we'll dwell into in a bit, you come back and you find Pete's dead body, which, by the way, on a side note, I want to blame Clem now. When she leaves the van, she leaves the door wide open. Clem clearly killed Pete here. There's no way of sugarcoating it. And like, it's a miracle he managed to crawl out and go around and then die behind the rock. But yeah, so like, that's how Pete dies. But when you play Nick's version, you're probably assuming like, oh, I reckon it's gonna sort of be the same thing. Nick will take Pete's place. But there isn't a bite though, so you're kind of wondering how it's gonna happen. But you go in the shed and Nick's like kind of like on the floor, passed out, and you're like, I think at one point you might think he's a zombie or he's dead or something. And it turns out he's just passed out from alcohol, and whether he's drunk, I can't remember, or he's just passed out from the alcohol. But it's a nice little twist that, oh, Nick's actually okay. So yeah, it's just a nice little bit of variation there, one that I do respect. The next thing to mention, really, lad, is that there is the bit where when you come back, you're just alone in the house with Sarah, where she takes the photo. We meet Carver for the first time, who is clearly the person trying to hunt down this group. We clock on pretty early that this is like Rebecca's, like, you know, past lover, or the person she slept with, and it's like, you know, the father to the kid, and he's after your group, so you're trying to like hide. There's not much you can do. I saw you tried to have quite a defensive playthrough where you wouldn't let him in. He goes through regardless. So there's not much to talk about here other than Carver himself and his performance, really. He's voiced by Michael Madsen. I mean, that's pretty significant, isn't it? Like, he is a big actor. So I remember being quite gobsmacked at the time that he landed, or like Telltale landed Michael Madsen, because Kill Bill are like some of my favourite movies. I'm obsessed with those films. I love them. And then to see like Michael Madsen in a Telltale Walking Dead game, I was over the moon. And yeah, I just wanted to get your take on it.
It is a coup. It really is a coup. And I mean, speaking for me personally, I think I was most familiar with him because he was in Reservoir Dogs. But then, funny enough, it's only when I thought about it, I was like, oh my God, actually, yeah, he's in a Bond film. He's in Die Another Day. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I thought, wow, like, you know, I know that it, you know, season 1 was given Game of the Year, and this is the follow-up. But I was like, still, like, this is impressive. I do obviously have my thoughts on how Carver is used in this season, but I think we'll perhaps get to them in the next episode. But overall, a very strong antagonist. You know, I think he suits the role perfectly. That sort of like gravelly voice. You never get a friendly person with a gravelly voice, do you? They're always going to be a bit of a wrong 'un, and Carver proved to be that way. But yeah, like you say, I was just very defensive. I knew that, you know, it would play out as it played out. But he, you know, even going into future episodes, he seems to dig that as well. He seems to like it when Clem is a little bit ferocious and gives a bite back. He doesn't seem to like it when you've got likes of Reggie and that sort of like bend over backwards for him. I think he quite appreciates a little bit of back and forth with characters. So I probably played into his hands a little bit.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. But yeah, no, really good performance. And yeah, I share your sentiment about how Carver's used throughout the season as well. And I'm sure we'll dwell into that, and potentially in the next episode, actually. Despite this, so like the group leave, don't they? And we get to the iconic bridge scene. I'm just going to let you freestyle here, mate. Tell us about your playthrough on the bridge and what you thought of it.
First thing, I mean, I absolutely love it, but I'm going to say this point now because it's probably the point that it's most useful to bring up in. But it's in this whole segment going on from here where you really start to notice, like, cool, really? They're really letting Clem take the reins. Like, hey, you know, little kid, little girl, like, and you know, she's new to the group. But she's out there with Luke. She's got the binoculars out. She's looking at the bridge. Everyone else is stood behind doing nothing, looking around, seeing what there is. You know, seeing the bridge, seeing the house. Then she's off killing the 2 zombies on the bridge. Then she's going along the bridge. Like, you'd think that one of the other adults would be like, "No, we'll go across, you know, in case something goes down." But no, Clem's going along.
Yeah, I want to intervene as well and sort of mention that it's more than just the bridge scene, isn't it? Throughout this whole episode, Clem's doing a lot. She's having to go up the ladder to sort like the windmill thing out. She has to go outside and fix the generator, for fuck's sake. Like, she's 10, 11 in this game, and they're making the little girl fiddle about with some electrics. And it's just like, I get she's the main character and like you've got to give like the player some license to do things, but like the logic in which they go about it is really weird, and it just makes you like wonder how this group have survived for this long.
I know. I was gonna mention that. Like, you go, she's doing the lookout bit, like you say, go up the ladder, which again, did spring about one of my favourite lines. So before she goes up there, she's talking to Luke, and like it's all nicey nice. You know, Luke's just trying to get to know her, and you know, she says, "Oh, I had a tree house once," and Luke's like, "Oh, did you?" Like, really sort of interested, and then Clem just goes, "Yeah, I hated it." And I just loved playing as Savage Clem. Like, I just loved some of the little lines that she delivered in that. But yeah, it was absolutely ridiculous. Like, why? I mean, obviously I know why we're doing it, because, you know, we're Clem, we're playing the game. But, you know, from a point of view where even in certain dialogue moments, the adult's saying, "Oh, go on, Clem, you do it," sort of thing. It's like, it's just really, really odd. You know, I'm all about character growth, but this is just a little bit ridiculous, if you ask me. But yeah, honestly, to come back to the scene itself on the bridge, good scene, some nice QTEs. Some of them really caught me out. I'll mention this now, like the one where you got to swipe down, you know, where it comes up red and you've got to like swipe down or swipe left or right, whatever. They did nearly catch me out at times. The bit with Matthew, again, it's heartbreaking, isn't it? Because obviously when you know what comes later on, but I come back to it. There's a bit before you're walking with Luke, and I've literally got a quote here. It says, "I don't trust Nick to tie his shoes," right? So I'm sat there, especially after in episode 1, him nearly shooting Clem on the floor, right? He was useless when he was with Pete, and there was the zombies at the end of episode 1. And now he's still being allowed to take the gun, even though he's not trusted. He comes onto the bridge, shoots an innocent person, and then he has the gall to say, "Oh yeah, he put his gun up first." He's like, "No, he didn't, mate." So otherwise, a good scene. I did have a little bit of a fun bit with Alvin afterwards. Again, I was a bit savage. You find the food, and he's like, "Oh, you know, mind keeping it quiet?" And I said, "No." And also there was almost like the semblance of like a conspiracy starting, because Alvin was going, yeah, we need to do something about Nick. And I was like, yeah, we really do. So it's almost like Gangster Clem was starting to come out as well. He was like already trying to off Nick. So it was all his fate was sealed. Like there was no way he was getting out of episode 2, mate. I'm telling you. But yeah, I mean, all that bit, the bridge, right up to the lodge and the showdown, big thumbs up. I really like it.
Yeah, I think as well, like with that whole bridge scene as well, it offers us like a pretty gruesome death with Matthew, doesn't it? Like the way, like it's not just a headshot; he gets shot in the throat, and then he's like struggling to breathe, and then he's like trying to like almost cry out for help while he falls off the bridge. It's like, oh wow, they really went into the detail to give this character a really gruesome death at the hands of Nick. But yeah, I just kind of like I like the way that this bridge scene, which is just kind of a bit of a randomer scene, you don't really know if it's going to really play a big part. Later on in the episode, it has that massive effect because obviously it ties in and you find out it's Walter's boyfriend. And then, yeah, like Walter, who is this really warm character who's like, yeah, welcome into the lodge. You know, he's got his jumper on. He's all like welcoming, putting on music and cooking. And then just you get that like horror scene where he's outside with the knife and he's got like the cigarette and then you can't see his eyes. And I'm like, I really like the way they did that shift with Walt. So it's just cool how like the Matthew into Walter like effect happened. Now I'm all for that as well. One thing I just kind of wanted to ask you is something we didn't really tackle on in the last episode, but you can take the watch, can't you, when you're kind of sneaking around the house? And when Nick has a bit of a vent and he does start feeling sorry for himself, thinking, oh, maybe I did screw up there, you can give him the watch because he's like, oh, I left it back at the lodge. And I saw, you were like, nah, I'm not giving it back to him.
Oh, it was beautiful because it's one of them moments where I just went on the stream, I just went dead quiet and I was like letting the little bar along the bottom tick. And I was thinking, I wonder if people are going to think, oh, he'll cave in, he'll give him the watch. And I was like, no, it's like, not going to give him the watch. Like I say, Nick just did not have a very good episode. It came to me, being in control. So yeah, again, Savage Clem, just taking it for herself and not taking shit from anyone.
Yeah, I don't think I actually took the watch in my blind playthrough because I thought to myself like, oh, like I'm already stealing meds and supplies off these guys. If they find out I've got a watch as well, it's going to end badly. And I thought it'd be a bit like Life is Strange Before the Storm, where you can you can buy the weed and then you get frisked later on in the next episode, and then it bites you in the ass. So I was like, yeah, I'm not taking this. So like, I wish I could have, but still, it's cool that like you get rewarded for doing the risk there. So yeah, like, and obviously, I go back into what we mentioned with Walt. Obviously, quite a sad fate for him. There's no way Walt can survive, which I guess is fair because it kind of serves as how ruthless like Carver and his group are, and I feel like bodies needed to die there. I feel if like Nick and Alvin, you had the perfect playthrough where they both survive, I think it would be a bit like tacky, and if no one got out unscathed, so I guess someone had to die, it's probably going to be Walt. So yeah, but it's still really brutal when he did die.
So when you first go into the lodge and you got the Christmas tree and everything, there's some music played in the background. Now I'm pretty sure it's called Waltz of the Flowers or something like that, but I just had like a little throwback to What Remains of Edith Finch, because whenever I hear that music now, I either think of being a frog, like just like jumping around in the bathtub, or I think of the Detroit Become Human video where like Cara hates Alice. So there you go, guys, there's a little plug. There's 2 videos if you want to go check them out. But yeah, it's just funny how like these little things are all connecting, with all the games we're covering, mate.
No, for sure. No, you're right. And I noticed that as well because I totally forgot that was in. And you know what? That whole kind of scene actually where you hear the music in the lodge, I agree with you that I do think, Penny's reunion all the way to the chaos at the end is, like the best part. I wouldn't criticize it for being dead, but there is that bit where you're just going around the lodge and talking. But I do quite like those Telltale scenes where you just go around and you have dialogue with everyone, where you can meet all the new characters, check in with the other ones, and then like there's that tension of Carlos, like what do you make of this group and stuff. So yeah, no, it's certainly a really strong episode. You're probably right. It might just be the strongest one because of the sheer variety, the fact that we can have deaths, you know, two potential canon, non-canon deaths, a death guaranteed, and then two reunions, which is just sick. The last thing I wanted to mention, mate, before I conclude this episode is I just want to praise the credit song in this game. It's my favorite credit song that Telltale do, where you get the credits with the windmill at the end there. It's by a girl called Janelle Drewis, and it's a famous song by, I think, Leadbelly, but it's like famous because Kurt Cobain performed it live, called like Where Did You Sleep Last Night, but in this version it's called In the Pines. Now, what I love about this song is that they actually got one of the animators to sing it. Like, the lady singing, Janelle Drewis, works for Telltale. She's an animator. She's done a bunch of stuff for like Pixar and Disney, but she worked for Telltale at this point. And she just straight up just volunteered, like, yeah, I'll do the singing. So yeah, nice little Easter egg there.
No way, I didn't know that. Because I'm trying to think back now, because all of the credit songs are different, aren't they? It's not the same one each time. At least I don't think it is.
Yeah, you're right. So, and that's another thing that season 2 probably has over season 1, that they kind of like mixed it up in there, and like, well, I think season 1 only had a really cool song at the end of the last episode. This one pretty much does it for all of them, I believe.
Yeah, no, great, mate. Great little tidbit of information there. But no, other than that, I've got nothing else to add.
Sweet. Well, guys, join us next week for episode 3, where we'll be going over to Hal's hardware store, where we're going to be hostage. We're going to meet the likes of Jane, Mike. We're going to like wonder where the fuck Luke's gone, and we're going to meet a one-armed friend, and Jack's going to order McDonald's. So until then, we will see you in the next one.
Catch you later.